Welcome back to ThinkTech on Thursday. I'm Jay Fidell. This is America Finding Its Way. We have our regular contributors. We have Tim Apicella. He is a museum curator. Stephanie Dalton, she is an educator. Cynthia Sinclair, she is a social activist, may I say. And Winston Welch, we'll get back to you on what he is. He's many things. Let's talk about Joe Biden. We're trying to, see how America is finding its way post-Trump. This is not easy. There's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of misapprehension, misunderstanding. Very strange things happening in the country. That's why in your show yesterday, Tim, you asked me a question. I said I got to get back to you on that because I really don't know where we are. Do you know where we are? Can you tell me how Joe Biden is doing today?
I think Joe Biden is doing very, very well. And I think things that we've discussed in the past is that at last we've come to a moment where we have a rational president again, a president that doesn't tweet, 15, 20, 25, 30 times a day, someone who is dedicated to the task of serving his mission. And the mission is serving the American people. So from that standpoint, Joe Biden is doing wonderful and he's trying to get things done. And though he has a full plate, and particularly things that are out of his control, and that's COVID and the impeachment trial, he's trying to establish his agenda, which I think he's doing very quietly, and I think he's trying to do it very effectively. And most importantly, though, he's trying to be successful at it, rather than throwing it against the wall to see if it sticks. So from that standpoint, Joe Biden is doing very, very well. He has his challenges. He knows that he has a certain grace period as far as his power to get things passed. I mean, we're at neck, we're tied in the Senate, and that could switch at any time. I mean, all it takes is one senator to either resign or, you don't never know what's going to happen to human beings. And so that break-even tie with the vice president is very tenuous. And so that would certainly change his entire agenda should that ever change, and it could. So he has to get things done fast. There's no more 100 days grace period, the honeymoon. Those days are over. So he just has to forge ahead. And if the GOP is not willing to follow with that and get things passed, then he'll have to just go through it with a majority vote, being with Vice President Harris to do so.
Yeah, that's why he went to Milwaukee, isn't it? He wanted to approach the people. That was a natural strategy, try to convince the people so they can convince the legislature, the Congress. My question is, we forget so quickly how bad it was, how very totally bad it was with Trump. And, there are people out there that are actually criticizing Biden now on all kinds of policy points. How do you feel about that?
Well, they're going to do that. This is politics. And certainly since the 1980s, the politics has become so polarized. As we were talking before the show, it's to the point where one side or the other says, I can't allow you to have a success because any success means that we're going to fail at the polls the next time around. So no matter how important the success is, either in the passage of a law or a policy that benefits the American people, we're against it automatically because your success means our failure at the polls. And that's just not the way politics should be. That's not the way politicians should enter Congress with that sort of attitude and mentality. And those days have to stop. And with Donald Trump, that was amplified tenfold. We need to get back to sanity. And the sanity is governing for the sake of the nation and the sake of its people.
Yeah, my whole thing is that every senator owes a duty of loyalty to the nation. He can say, I only represent my constituents who bang on my door. But no, he also has a duty to the nation. That's why, to me, the acquittal was so shocking. That, you have a totally airtight case and they vote against it. There's no cover there. There's no excuse there. Anyway, Cynthia, I want to go to you because of our discussion before the show. And that is what we have here is we have things that are popping up, even shortly after Trump. Even when we recognize how totally bad Trump was, we have an argument about Cuomo in New York. We have a petition for recall of Newsom in California. I believe, you can correct me, that these are Republican-generated attacks on, on liberal Democrat officials. What's going on?
Well, I know that the investigation against Governor Cuomo in New York started before the Biden administration took over, quite a long bit before even, ever since Trump decided he didn't like what Governor Cuomo was saying about him. So he started to go after him. And because the DOJ belonged to Trump before, while he was in office, that's what they did. Now, one of the things that I don't understand why nobody's talking about, though, the main thing they're getting mad at him for is underreporting deaths in nursing homes. Well, what it was is he wasn't necessarily underreporting the deaths exactly. He was just attributing them to the hospital that they died in instead of the nursing home that they came from. And that's still well, which one do you attribute it to? And granted, maybe that led to more infections and more problems. But what I hear everybody saying is, oh, all these horrible deaths, they turned the nursing homes into a death zone. And I think, have you heard about the other nursing homes all over the country doing the exact same thing, regardless of whether or not Cuomo was the governor? This isn't a problem with the leadership, I don't think. I think he was the only one out there trying to do something. And this is all they could find to go after him for.
Well, you know what? I mean, I don't have data on this, but it strikes me, that one of the things the Trumpers do, and it's by indirection, it's not Trump himself, but it's his proxies, try to attack, Democratic officials. And this is much ado about nothing. May I say that? It's Shakespearean. Much ado about nothing. And yet, we have the press getting on the bandwagon here and attacking Cuomo, but it sounds to me like a Republican attack. And my question to you, how does that compare with Newsom in California? And are we going to see more of this?
Yes. And I think it's the same thing. And yes, I believe we will see more of this, lots more of this. And, we don't see the Democrats going after Ted Cruz. The media is, but I don't know if the Democrats especially are. And I think, it's sort of a one-sided fight we've got going on. And I think that's good. I'm not saying I want the Democrats to stoop to that crummy level, but when are the Republicans that are decent people, and there's plenty of them, why aren't they stepping up? Why aren't they saying something? Why aren't they saying, I did sort of let my morals go for a little while to see what would happen, but now that I've seen what would happen, I think I want them back. Something, anything, but they're not. And that really bothers me that they're not standing up for the moral fiber of our country.
Yeah. We're not out of the woods, are we?
No, we're not. Sorry.
Let's move to you, Stephanie. Stephanie, the schools, okay? Biden wants to go back to school. There are issues about whether kids get COVID and whether you can, go back to school without, giving vaccinations to all those kids. And then it's an issue about whether we should be giving vaccinations to the teachers and the staff in the schools. Where are we on that? Is it likely to happen? He's getting plenty of pushback on it. Is the pushback legitimate?
Thanks for asking about my favorite topic and my current deep concern ongoing. I haven't understood, well, I suppose I do understand why teachers were never in the priority or ever under the rubric of essential workers. And all of this has been an ongoing concern and rant about the schools opening or not opening and what will happen if they do. I know that we've done a lot of studies and a lot of analysis and looking at other countries to see what are the features that will be protective for students and teachers. And we do know that those cost money. So one of the problems has been that it takes money and funding to open the schools so that everybody can be assured, especially parents, that they're not sending their kids to the death camp, right? So you've got that, but the other side of it is, of course, the teachers. Who's going into the 35-person get together for 6 hours every day. I mean, the teaching and is very physical and very transmissive of every kind of unbelievable thing that people have excreting from them, whether it's sneezing, coughing, all of things with kids. Plus, there's always, in addition to being contained in a small space, because space is very expensive. That's one of the features of on the list that tells us how safely to open schools is to increase the space so that we have smaller pods of kids together and far apart from one another, and lots of social distancing. Well, space is expensive, and teachers are reluctant, and reasonably so, to go back into a real tight situation where the data is not clear about the transmission issues.
What's the best
Now, it is
policy?
getting
What do you
clear
think he should do, Stephanie?
that the policy is the teacher should have been up on the list of
But what
essential
about
workers.
now? What about right now?
Now, yes, the vaccination of teachers should be an option for anybody that wants one anytime. And not a requirement necessarily for opening schools. If you want to go in there and you're doing a lot of other things your own self, do it, but you can have access to a vaccination. I think that that would make a very big difference. First of all, we respect the role that teachers have and the proximity that they must maintain with other little humans. And they know they're not as it's not the same thing as a doctor or a nurse, but actually it's very close to that because they're right up against humans in
Does it
every
change your
single
view,
way.
Stephanie, if I tell you that the distribution system is not working the way Biden wants? If I tell you that there have been delays in shipments, and in some states, they've been out of pocket. Think of Texas. Think of California. They're not getting the vaccines that they had hoped to get. So does that change your view of it? What can we do about that?
I don't know, we're not getting our vaccines. They were supposed to come in yesterday, but because of the problems on the mainland with the weather, we're not getting the vaccines either. So I think that now let's give Biden his 2.5, 3 week break here. But yes, this whole Department of Transportation person of leadership responsibility needs to get this show on the road, not by slow boat to China. He's got to get it here. If that means flying them in, or I mean, whatever. There has to be some federal oomph here to bump it up if we're going to make it happen. And especially because we're trying to outrun the variations. So we've got to get people not just vaccinated to survive our first goal, but now we have these other bugs coming that we need to have be prepared for too. So this will be a test of Biden's administrative capacity, and hopefully he's going to pass this test.
Winston, one of the big issues here is whether we have really had a change in the base, in the 74 million people, who voted for Trump in the Congress, where 147 of them on the very day of the insurrection voted against the popular vote, or rather the legal vote, electing Biden. So have we had a change? It seems to me that the Republicans are hardening, and that they're less likely to agree, as Tim suggested, with any initiative by Biden. Where is that going? We're in a strange confluence, a strange dynamic now, where I don't think we can be optimistic about the Republican Party, either on the ground or in Congress. How about you? How do you feel about that?
I think it's like the county fair where they're trying to catch a greased pig right now. They don't, they don't know where they're going or what they're doing. They're just all covered in mud, and the pig is running around. So, look, Jay, we got serious problems in this country, and I don't think the Republicans are able to stand up right now and say, this is who we are, this is what we believe in. They're fractured. There was a great article in the Los Angeles Times opinion section, short one, David Ulin, talking about post-Trump derangement syndrome. And he says we need to keep our guard up. For the last 4 years, we had to focus our shock and activism on one person. The former president sucked the oxygen out of everything. Evicting him from office was Herculean. It was hardly a sure thing, but even before he tried to steal the election. He said, but Inauguration Day was a day spent in hell, yet the dangers are more scattered now. The threats seemed as pronounced but less distinct. At whom or what do I direct my anxiety? And that's, I think, how we're feeling. He says it should get a listing in the Merck manual about post-Trump derangement syndrome. We're still.
You heard it here on ThinkTech.
We're captivated by it.
PTSD, right?
He contributes to it. He says, I know I check my media 5-6 times a day. We talk about him all the time ad infinitum. We're wrestling with our outrage. We're contributing to our own symptoms. So somehow we all need to shake free of this slime that's been put over our entire nation. And like Cynthia said, there's very good people. Half the people in our nation, they have been hoodwinked. And when they wake up and find that out and say, right, I'm actually a principled conservative, and my party is the Republican Party, and that is what it has been and should be. And I'm reclaiming my party. They need to take that line from Maxine Waters and say, reclaiming my party. And
is there any sign of that now, Winston? Or is that aspirational?
Aspirational, but you saw little musings toward it when Mitch McConnell said, it's not over with Donald Trump. He still has a lot to go. He has lawsuits that are coming down the pike that are real, that have teeth. I think it's just words. But, you think back, there was an article in the Washington Post about the Pizzagate fellow. You remember him? That he went in, and that was a number of years ago when he went in there. I think it was maybe 4 years ago or something like that. Well, he is out of, he just got out of jail. That was 2016. And you think about that. We think of that as that was one lunatic who bought into this, Hillary Clinton's drinking the blood of children, whatever, he went in there. But now you have members of Congress who, it's morphed into this QAnon. So this is now people being elected to office with these same ideas that are infecting the population. So I think when you can say, is it working? Eventually, people of good conscience will say, yes, Donald Trump had some things that I really liked about him, but his character was so bad, I couldn't stand that, but I still held my nose and voted for him. But eventually they're gonna have to realize that a principled conservative party is what they're really supporting. They'll find their feet again. I'm feeling more optimistic because of you yesterday, Jay. It was contagious.
Well, let me since our discussion yesterday, I have talked to two people who I admire to some extent, who are on the national scene, and both of them have expressed an admiration for some of the things that Trump did. Not the insurrection, but some of the things that Trump did. And I'm saying, have they forgotten?
Well,
what is it? We're going to hear more
of that. The list is so small. And if you separate it out from underlying issues that are huge, and you get to his list of what it is, what did Donald Trump actually do that you really like, that you can point to? That's why we ask our viewers, share that with us, because if they are actually principled conservative items, the list, it's so buried in all of the garbage that was surrounding it. If they can pull those out, maybe that's where the Republicans can start and say, these were principled conservative things that we actually support and that principled people could support if they are of a conservative nature. Maybe that's where they start.
That's a beautiful thought. I personally would never ascribe to that, but it's a beautiful thought.
I'm optimistic today.
Today you are. We switch. Tim, I want to go to you for a minute, although I know Cynthia has a lot to say. She's waiting her turn here. Tim, it's been very clear that Trump emptied the government. And, he fired people, he suborned them, corrupted them. Look at the Department of Justice. Rachel Maddow had a show earlier this week where she ticked off all the people in the Department of Justice and all the bizarre things that Trump caused them to do, that Barr caused them to do. That's not over. A lot of them are still there. And furthermore, there's a lot of empty offices in the Justice Department, in the State Department, in all the departments. He hollowed out government. so he could run everything by himself, in my view. And the question is, how far down the path are we at restoring government, restoring a legitimate, bureaucratic, I hate to use the term, but, a government that has expertise and qualified people, that you can't do that in 3 weeks or a month. How are we doing on that?
I think quietly, Biden is cleaning the loyal lackeys that Donald Trump put into position. Very quietly, that's happening. We're just not hearing about it. I think Joe Biden's, I think his move is to say, I'm willing to have you serve, but I need you to rededicate yourself to your oath of office. I need you to rededicate yourself to the mission of your agency. And if it's your intent to just wait this out until you can pledge your allegiance to the next leader that comes along, be it Donald Trump or whoever, no, you don't have a place in this agency as either a deputy prosecutor or an agency head or anything like that. So
what about those who violated a morality? What about those who did?
They got to go.
Inappropriate things.
They have to go. I'm sorry, but you violated your oath. You did so knowingly. You did so because you wanted to be in the good graces of Donald Trump. No, you have proven yourself to be non-qualified for the position you're now working in. So they have to go.
I want to ask you one more question before we move on to Cynthia, and that is the economy. I think a reasonable case can be made that the COVID has cost us the economy, and we haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen the bottom of it, but it's on that direction. People without jobs, entrepreneurs without businesses, a future economy that is in dire straits, and we'll see it soon. A lot of people feel that way. I feel that way. So the question is, how are we doing on the economy, and do you see the clear connection between the $1.9 trillion, which in many ways is one payment only? Yeah. From that to building or rebuilding an economy.
Multifaceted question there, because if you've looked at the last 4 years, what everyone's looking at is their 401ks, and then they equate the economy to the stock market. Yet the stock market, if you look at the fundamentals of PE ratios or return on assets, the fundamentals do not warrant this sort of pricing that we see in the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the Standards and Poor's. I mean, we are certainly in a pricing bubble. And so to answer your question, I think the fundamentals of this economy is in pretty sad shape. And I believe that it's going to take some fundamental changes for the reality, particularly if it's a recession that we're ignoring right now, with unemployment and our production output. We've got to get back to a fundamental economy, which we're not doing right now. And why aren't we doing it? Is because everyone thinks the economy is doing pretty well. Yet there's food lines, people waiting in their cars for food. There's people that are fearful that they're going to be evicted from their homes because they can't pay their rent. We have all sorts of stop-loss measures to prop this alien economy up, and it's only a matter of time before those measures, the stimulus or whatever you want to call it, they are no longer with us. So the reality of where we're at is going to come crashing down, I think. But you wouldn't know that by the stock pricing.
Oh, and that may or may not be accurate. It could be just a function of foreign money having nowhere else to go, goes into our stock market. So Cynthia, we have social problems in the country. We have immigration problems in the country. We have a morality problem, if you will, in the country. And Trump exacerbated that in every way humanly possible. But query, what is Joe Biden doing about it? And has it taken effect yet? And how quickly can he move? How quickly can we correct these social problems? Or is that a tinderbox ready to go off again?
I think it has to be done slowly and carefully. And I think it is a tinderbox, a very sensitive tinderbox. Immigration specifically is. People they're very passionate about how they feel about it. And I see all these posts coming through Facebook. I think we should open our schools before we open our borders and things like that and stuff. And I think, gosh, opening our borders is kind of an important part of our economy too. So it's this balancing act that President Biden has to do every day with every single thing. So the fact that he keeps even a quasi level head, to me, is remarkable, given the completely complex issues of every single social issue: food, water. Look at Texas with no power. Of course, they don't want to be any part of the PUCs that are everywhere else. But boy, they sure want FEMA to come down there and help them, don't they? So there's all these, but Biden didn't say, no, you guys are a red state, forget it. We're not giving, of course not. And what a difference. That just shook me when I saw that. His first thing was, of course, we're going to bring those Americans some help. Whereas what did Trump say to the people in California about the fires? Go rake your forests and you'll be fine. He barely sent them any help even, and blamed it on them. I haven't heard one thing out of the Biden administration that says, Texas, this is all your fault. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Media
A
made.
valuable point. We should never forget what Trump didn't do.
Yes.
You could be outraged at what he did do, but you could be even more outraged at what he didn't do. Stephanie, we have a disinformation problem in the country. We have a problem with social media. We have a problem with people being ignorant and loving it. Query, what can Biden do? And I'm kind of asking, on the flip side, what can Congress do? Because Congress should be doing something, but Congress isn't doing anything. And I doubt that that's high on the list of priorities. But isn't that an existential threat that people are ignorant by the millions, by the tens of millions?
Well, thank you for such a challenging question. I think that we did hear a while ago about the FCC looking into putting a stopgap on some of these proliferating radio stations. And, now that Rush Limbaugh's gone, maybe, some of the impetus may get reorganized. But so there's that. But one other thing that's come up is that Biden has to fill all these positions in all these agencies, and all these people that were political appointees in these agencies, have done some burrowing in, but they will be subject to the norms of the agency, and won't have necessarily any more voice as they had before when they're with the administration. But anyway, so filling up the rest of the agency and the executive branches functions by hiring people for the positions will go a long way to help. Also, we now see that there's a huge role that the commercial corporations can play in helping with this issue and reestablishing norms. I mean, I'm fairly astounded that Facebook and Twitter and these places have gone as far as they have to make some rules and to actually keep some people quiet. So it may be that this piece of America, so important to our free enterprise system, is understanding it has a role to play.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's a good thing to see that phenomenon, arising. Winston, I want to ask you about all these civil actions, criminal actions that are coming down the pike. Every day, more information rolls out about what courts are involved, what prosecutors, what civil complaints and plaintiffs are involved. Is this going to have a material effect on Trump's ability to rouse up his base?
Again, I think it's part of that. How do we know? He's going to be sued everywhere. He is a master at evading the system, and I don't think we're going to find any sense of justice or peace in that. So whatever comes out of it is going to come out of it. But I think, again, so much attention has been placed on this man, our attention, and rightly so. And you ask, what is Winston? Winston's an American citizen, just like all of us, who's concerned about his nation, who should be concerned about his nation, because it's our nation. And we all love this nation. We want the best for this nation.
But we want you to be confident of the administration of justice, Winston. And you didn't get any more confident with the acquittal. Now, if Trump can beat all those cases, how confident are you going to be of the administration of justice in this country and the government? How confident are all of us going to be?
He may not be beating all of it, and that's just it. And this is an aberration in our system, and that is why, the famous thing that de Tocqueville actually never said was, America's great because she's good, and if America ever ceases to good, she will cease to be great. We need to get back to that goodness. We need to get back to it on an individual level, on a neighborhood level, on a city level. It needs to bleed through our whole society. Stephanie's right, it's education. It starts from the top down with leadership like Joe Biden, and it starts from the bottom up, from parents teaching their kids. Lying is bad in general, especially when you have to fact check the president. So it's all around. We have a lot of problems, but Texas doesn't have electricity or gas right now. I bet those people are pretty happy to get some help from the federal government.
Don't you think there's going to be more of that? We have not done what we should have been doing on climate change.
There's been
a whole storms and fires and floods and hurricanes.
Yes,
and Texas is just the beginning, don't you think, Winston?
It is, but it's part of this. There's been a whole hollowing out of our infrastructure, whether it's our fiscal infrastructure, to our physical infrastructure, to our social infrastructure, to our political infrastructure. We have a lot of, like Cynthia said, slow, steady rebuilding that we need to do. We're going to be seeing a lot of gaps showing up like this, and people want to point the finger at it, but the reality is it's been going on for decades that allowed us to have Donald Trump be the president. So we will fill in these holes, we'll fill in the gaps, we'll strengthen our institutions. We have a good roadmap in front of us, and we're going to be confronted with things like Texas right now that also point to the way and say, hey folks, we got a lot of work to do, so let's just buckle down and get to the chore.
Okay, well, I'll take that as your last comment today.
Okay.
Cynthia, what is your last comment? Summarize and give us your state of mind.
Oh, well, now
you have 1 minute.
Questionable, so we won't go there. No, I'm just kidding. I really appreciate everything that Winston says. I love your positive attitude and your positive comments. They always make me feel a little better. I come on sometimes feeling really frustrated and upset, and I always end up leaving feeling better. So I appreciate all of you. I really do. And I just really wanted to say that. And then I want to end with sort of everything I've been talking about. We've sort of been talking about is these Republicans that we've just got to somehow break the spell that they're under. And I don't know how exactly, but I know that consistent love is gonna do it. And I've used this quote in the past, and I think it describes them, okay? It describes them quite well. It's a Voltaire quote. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And I think that these people have been led to believe in absurdities, and it's led them to commit horrible atrocities. And all we can do is hope that we can get those to make people believe the truth and then bring them back to reality.
Yeah, and you're not talking about the Democrats. You're talking about those intransigent Republicans. So I would join you on that, but I feel that the people who are standing in the way of progress and democracy and the continuation of the republic in this country are the Republicans who follow Trump and otherwise. So, Stephanie, what are your thoughts to summarize and give us your state of mind?
First of all, I want to briefly add something to my previous comment. I said teachers are sequestered with 35 kids all day. No, actually, as a high school student, a high school teacher, which have been, it's 150 kids all day, okay? So, and plus other duties that you have to and mix and match and get close up with these kids, wonderful kids. Okay, and the other point I wanted to make in respect to this ending comment is I keep hearing break the spell, that they're going to break their spell, that they're going to wake up, that they're going to return to the norms. You know, if we look to the example of Nazism and in even trying to find common ground, how can you find common ground if the racism is the topic that's on their list that was most highly represented by our previous president? What about if it's misogyny that's on the list of the accomplishments of our previous president, that he could show that that's okay? So how do we make common ground with that? And then going back to these, our allies who have been through this, as we've mentioned before, what did they have to do? They had to go to war, maybe? And we think that hasn't been completely off the table here with us, but also generational change can make a difference. So that means it takes a long time. But guess what is a factor in that? And that's education. So to get the young people to start thinking about things, not necessarily just restating what culture they come from, subculture or parental input they have, we need to give them options and alternatives to being stuck in any particular way of thinking and coming up to come to terms with their own ways of thinking and giving them tools to get to their own independent thinking stance.
Problem is,
on
you
issues.
can't.
So
you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Those kids, those young people out there, do they get it? Do they understand what you're talking about? Let me move to Tim. Tim, what's your closing, summary of this discussion and your state of mind and how you feel about going forward?
Joe Biden said, go big on this stimulus for COVID. Let me add on my thoughts to that, and that is go for broke. Go for broke for immigration reform. Go for broke with tackling COVID and eliminating it from our society and getting back to a norm that we used to know. Go for broke on the stimulus package. Go for broke on election reform, specifically tackle the ills and evil of gerrymandering, because that's part of the reason why we're in this mess that we're in. And we've been in this mess for 8 years, 12 years, and it's all about gerrymandering. And go for broke. So don't be timid. And I know he wants to strike a conciliatory tone and note with the Republicans, but if they're not willing to come along, then go along. Let's move ahead.
Wow, touches me. All of you touch me. Thank you very much. Tim Apicella, Winston Welch, Cynthia Sinclair, Stephanie Stoll-Dalton. Thank you very much. It's always great to talk to you guys, and we always have new ideas, and it's always a tremendous encouragement to see critical thinking right in front of us. Thank you very much. Aloha.